It seems like everywhere you turn these days, people are talking about how much time we spend online, and you really can't ignore it when you look at someone like Mr. Beast,
Yeah,
or Jimmy Donaldson, as he's actually known.
right.
He's kind of this like emblem of the modern attention economy. So today we're going to dive into that world.
Yeah, and you sent over that YouTube transcript from Kyla Scanlon.
Mm-hmm.
Her video is called Gen Z and the Attention Economy, and I think it's a really interesting place to start this conversation.
It is, and our goal today is to take that video, pull out all of the important ideas, and give you a shortcut to understanding this really complex topic.
Yeah, so you don't have to go and watch the whole video yourself.
Exactly.
So Scanlon kicks off the video with a pretty powerful comparison.
Okay.
She compares the Surgeon General's warning on cigarettes,
Oh, wow.
something that we all just kind of take for granted now,
Yeah.
the growing concern around social media and its impact on mental health, especially for young people.
Oh, that's a really good point and an interesting way to start.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things that kind of makes you stop and think.
It really does.
And she goes on to actually use this vivid image of the slot machine lever and how that's what it feels like to pull to refresh on your phone.
It's so true.
And it really captures that feeling of like being addicted to these platforms.
It does. And then when you consider that 95% of teenagers in America have smartphones, and 1/3 of those teenagers report being on social media almost constantly, it really starts to paint a picture of the scale of what we're talking about today.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's actually dig into this idea of the attention economy a little bit.
Okay.
What does that even mean?
Yeah.
So at its core, the attention economy refers to the fact that our attention has become an incredibly valuable and very limited resource.
Right.
And businesses globally are in this constant state of competition to capture and retain our attention.
Oh, yeah.
And I think what's really interesting is that it's kind of moved beyond just selling us products or services.
Right.
Our focus itself has actually become the commodity.
I like that idea.
Yeah. And Scanlon uses this really powerful analogy.
Okay.
She suggests that, in a way, social media has turned human connection into something that can feel like a drug,
Yeah, wow.
something that is addictive.
Yeah.
And she even talks about this underlying feeling of being constantly watched or surveilled online.
Right, that creepy feeling that you're never really alone.
Exactly. And when you combine that with the fact that these platforms are designed to trigger dopamine responses in our brains,
Mhm.
you can start to see how this all connects.
Right.
Dopamine is a brain chemical that's associated with pleasure and reward.
So it makes us feel good.
Right. And so it can lead to what Scanlon describes as a subtle but continuous form of behavior modification.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And she goes on to say that, this is why so many people end up feeling kind of jittery and cranky.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, think about how you feel when you haven't checked your phone in a few hours or if you've left it at home.
Absolutely. And this is a great transition to talking about someone who's really mastered this world, Mr. Beast,
Oh, yeah.
or Jimmy Donaldson.
Yeah.
Scanlon actually refers to him as a master of his craft and compares him to figures like Isaac Newton or Leonardo da Vinci,
Oh, wow.
which might seem like a bit of a stretch.
I mean, yeah, a little bit.
But when you look at his impact on YouTube and the wider attention economy, I think it becomes clear that that's not really hyperbole.
No, it's not. His influence is huge.
It is. So just to give you a sense of scale,
Okay.
his video titles often use clickbait.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Things like 50 YouTubers fight for $1 million or his real-life recreation of Squid Game.
I've seen that one.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
These videos draw in huge viewing numbers, often surpassing even major events like presidential debates.
That's wild.
It really is, and his follower count is just mind-boggling.
I know.
Over 430 million across all of his various channels.
That's more than the entire population of the United States.
Exactly, and Scanlon actually points out that this makes him a king in a way.
He's like digital royalty.
Exactly.
That's pretty amazing.
And his influence is not limited to just YouTube anymore.
Oh, right. He's got all those other ventures going on now.
Yeah, so there's Mr. Beast Burger, which we all know, did $150 million in revenue, but it's also faced a lawsuit and countersuit regarding quality.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that. It was pretty controversial.
Then there's Feastables Chocolate.
Oh, yeah. I saw that Super Bowl commercial.
That's right, and now they're launching Feastables Lunchables.
What, like the Lunchables? Lunchables?
Yeah, so they're basically a competitor to the classic Lunchables.
Wow. So they're like partnering with other big YouTubers too, right?
Yeah, so Logan Paul and KSI are involved as well.
That's so interesting. I wonder how that's going to work out.
Yeah, me too. And there has been some criticism.
Oh, really?
People are kind of questioning, like, is this really a new thing?
Right.
Is it just repackaging something that already exists?
Yeah.
But it is interesting to think about the target demographic here.
Yeah. Who are they going for?
Well, Scanlon points out that about 70% of Mr. Beast's viewers are teenage boys.
Oh, wow.
So that adds another layer to the discussion about what kind of content is being made and who it's reaching.
Yeah, that makes sense. So amidst all of this craziness, how much money does he make?
Well, he reportedly earns over $500 million annually.
500 million a year.
Yeah, and Scanlon says that he largely reinvests it back into making even more elaborate videos.
Right.
And he's also known for donating a lot to charity.
Right.
So he's doing a lot with that money.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah,
I mean, even if you don't love his content, you got to respect the hustle.
absolutely. But it hasn't all been smooth sailing.
Oh, right.
He's faced some challenges too.
Like what?
So Scanlon mentions a lawsuit filed by contestants on his $100 million Amazon competition series.
What was that about?
Well, apparently there were allegations of unsafe working conditions.
Oh, wow.
And Rolling Stone even compared it to Fyre Festival. Yeah, so, it raises some questions about the human cost of this kind of high-stakes production.
Yeah, for sure. That's a really important point.
Huh.
So what about this leaked Mr. Beast memo that I've been hearing about?
Right, so this is the 36-page document called How to Succeed in Mr. Beast Production.
Okay.
And Scanlon emphasizes just how significant this is.
Okay.
It's a rare behind-the-scenes look at how someone who's so successful at capturing and holding attention actually operates.
Oh, wow.
So what's in this memo?
Yeah, I'm dying to know.
Well, it focuses on a few key principles.
Okay.
Pay attention to the numbers and the analytics.
Makes sense.
Create content that excites the beast.
Who is the Beast?
Presumably Jimmy himself.
Okay.
Produce a high volume of content but maintain quality.
So quantity and quality.
Exactly. Stay intensely focused on the goals.
So like laser focus.
Exactly. And then finally, communicate frequently and effectively within the team.
So this is a very streamlined operation.
Oh, very much so, yeah.
And what does Scanlon say about this approach?
So she sees both potential positives and negatives.
Okay.
So on the plus side,
Yeah,
there's a clear emphasis on operational efficiency
that makes sense.
and a desire to avoid unnecessary bureaucracy.
Right. I mean, who wants red tape?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she even mentions Amazon as an example of a large company trying to streamline their processes in a similar way.
Oh, that's interesting.
But then she also raises some concerns.
Okay.
She frames the potential downside as an environment of relentless overproduction,
Oh, wow.
something she believes will only be amplified by advancements in AI.
So it's like a never-ending cycle of content creation.
It can feel that way.
Yeah. So do you think that this reflects a larger trend?
Absolutely.
Mm.
I think this brings us to a broader discussion about Gen Z in the workforce.
Okay, so who are we talking about when we say Gen Z?
So generally, we're talking about people born between 1997 and 2013.
Okay.
And they're becoming a really significant part of the working world.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that.
And in fact, they're actually expected to outnumber baby boomers in the workforce for the first time this year.
Wow, that's a huge shift.
It really is, and it hasn't been without some pushback.
What do you mean?
Well, there are definitely some widely held negative perceptions about Gen Z in a professional context.
Like what?
So the video cites a resumebuilder.com survey,
Okay.
which found that a pretty shocking 75% of managers report that Gen Z is difficult to work with,
Oh, wow.
often citing issues like entitlement and lack of company loyalty.
Oof.
Yeah, but the video also presents some counter-arguments
Okay.
and potential explanations for these perceptions.
Okay, I'm listening.
So one idea is that Gen Z is simply seeking more meaningful work.
Yeah.
They're not just going to take any job.
Right.
They're more discerning about their career choices.
Okay.
And they might be more willing to decline tasks or roles that don't align with their values.
I mean, that makes sense.
It does. And another thing to consider is the economic realities that Gen Z has grown up with.
Wow.
Things like the dot-com bubble burst,
Oh, yeah.
the Great Recession,
Right,
and the
right.
recent pandemic.
All very impactful events.
Absolutely. And those experiences have undoubtedly shaped their perspectives on work and financial security.
For sure. So do you think that's why they seem to prefer more flexible work arrangements?
I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
The video mentions how this preference for flexibility can sometimes clash with a more traditional 9-to-5 structure,
Right.
which is still very prevalent in a lot of workplaces.
Right. So it's like a generational clash.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. And then, of course, we can't forget about the influence of algorithms.
Right. Gen Z has grown up in a digital world that's been completely shaped by algorithms.
Absolutely. And the video suggests that this constant exposure can lead to a tendency to prioritize what performs well on these platforms
Okay.
over more purely creative expression.
So they're always thinking about how to get the most views or engagement.
Yeah, it's like they're constantly performing for the algorithm.
And that must get exhausting.
It can definitely lead to feelings of inauthenticity or burnout.
Right. So it's like they're trading authenticity for views.
You can feel that way. Yeah,
That's a bummer.
it is. And it's interesting to compare that to the Mr. Beast memo, which really emphasizes results over hours worked.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like he's really prioritizing efficiency and tangible outcomes.
Like he doesn't care how long it takes, just get it done.
Exactly. And I think there are some positive aspects to that approach that resonate with younger generations.
Like what?
Well, the video mentions the memo's emphasis on clear and direct communication
Okay.
and the importance of fair compensation.
I can definitely see how those things would appeal to Gen Z.
For sure. So, stepping back and looking at the bigger picture here,
Yeah.
this conversation about the attention economy connects to some even larger trends.
Like what?
Well, like the rapid advancement of AI, for example.
Oh, yeah. AI is everywhere these days.
And it's incredibly energy intensive.
Oh, right. I didn't really think about that.
Yeah. And the video mentions Amazon's investment in nuclear power
Whoa.
and Microsoft's partnership with Constellation.
Wow.
And it directly links these moves to the immense energy demands of AI infrastructure.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
It is. And it does feel like we're seeing some parallels between the current excitement around AI and previous technological booms.
Like what?
Well, like NFTs and cryptocurrency, for example.
Right.
Remember all the hype around those?
Oh, yeah.
And Scanlon actually references the Gartner hype cycle here.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that.
So it's basically a model that describes the typical progression of emerging technologies.
Okay.
And it shows that there's often this initial surge of enthusiasm and investment,
Right.
but then reality sets in and there's a period of disillusionment.
So it's like a roller coaster.
Exactly. And I think we're seeing that with AI right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. And speaking of disillusionment, let's not shy away from the downsides of the attention economy.
Right. So Scanlon points out some of the widely recognized issues here.
Okay.
Things like the gamification of our focus. This feeling that deeper meaning gets lost in the relentless pursuit of metrics
Yeah,
and the potential disconnect between operational success.
like high view counts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the actual value of the content being produced.
So just because something is popular doesn't mean it's actually good.
Exactly. And it's really telling that even someone like Jamie Dimon,
Who's that?
he's the CEO of JT Morgan,
Oh, wow.
advised students to turn off TikTok, Facebook, a total stupid waste of time.
Whoa, that's a pretty strong statement coming from someone like that.
It is, but he's not alone in his concerns.
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting is that he emphasizes the importance of focusing on learning, understanding history, engaging in real-world conversations.
Right, like actually talking to people.
Exactly.
So he's really concerned about this disconnect from reality.
Absolutely. And Scanlon uses this great term, digital candy, to describe this constant stream of often superficial content that we're bombarded with.
Oh, I like that.
And she highlights how overwhelming it can be.
It is. I mean, it feels like you can't escape it.
Right. And then there's that quote from a former Mr. Beast employee.
What did they say?
They said that algorithms are poisonous to humanity
Oh, wow.
because they prioritize addictive content for ad revenue.
That's a pretty bleak outlook.
It is, but I think it's an important point.
Yeah.
And the video makes a really important distinction here.
Okay.
The core issue isn't necessarily Mr. Beast himself.
Right.
It's the design of the platforms that incentivize and reward
Yeah.
this kind of highly engaging, often addictive content.
So he's just playing the game really well.
Exactly. And his operational focus, the drive for efficiency that we see in his memo,
Right.
really connects to this broader trend of optimizing for metrics.
Views, watch time, engagement, all that stuff.
Exactly. And sometimes that comes at the expense of deeper, more meaningful content.
So what's the alternative?
Well, that's a big question.
Mm.
And this is where the video brings in the concept of day two.
Okay, I haven't heard of that.
So it comes from Jeff Bezos.
The Amazon guy?
That's right. And his philosophy is that day two is stagnation irrelevance, a painful decline, and ultimately failure for a business.
So day 2 is bad.
Very bad. The goal is to always stay in day one.
So like always be innovating and adapting.
Exactly.
Okay.
And while Mr. Beast's memo definitely embodies this day one mentality with his relentless pursuit of creating the best YouTube videos possible,
Right.
The video contrasts this with a really insightful point from author John Green,
Okay.
who talks about the crucial importance of understanding why you desire what you desire.
Especially at a young age.
Yes, especially then.
So you can be super successful,
Right.
but if you haven't thought about your motivations, your why,
Exactly.
there's a real risk of ending up unhappy.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really powerful message.
It is, and the video actually points out that the Mr. Beast memo doesn't really articulate a clear goal beyond making really good YouTube videos.
Yeah.
So he's great at what he does,
Right.
but maybe he hasn't thought about the bigger picture.
Exactly. And I think that's something we can all learn from.
Yeah, for sure. So where does that leave us?
Well, I think the Mr. Beast memo offers a fascinating and valuable window
Hmm.
into how to operate effectively within the current digital landscape.
Okay.
But the video concludes by emphasizing that there are still some really crucial questions that remain about the long-term consequences of this attention economy
Right.
and this fundamental human need for purpose and meaning that extends beyond just the metrics.
Yeah, it's not all about views and likes and followers.
Exactly.
So at the end of the day, what are the big takeaways here?
Well, I think we've seen how the attention economy is this incredibly powerful force that's shaping not just online content creation,
Right.
but also how we work,
Yeah.
and even the direction of technological development.
And Mr. Beast is kind of the poster boy for all of this.
He really is.
But he also raises some really important questions about where we're headed.
For sure, and all of this can feel pretty overwhelming.
It really can. I mean, we're constantly being bombarded with information and requests for our attention.
Yeah, it's like a never-ending battle.
So what can we do?
I think the first step is just to be aware of what's happening,
Okay.
to understand how these platforms are designed to capture and hold our attention.
Right.
And then we can start to make more conscious choices about how we spend our time online.
So it's about taking back control.
Exactly. And I think the big question for all of us
Yeah.
is, in a world that's increasingly designed to capture and hold our attention,
Yeah.
what does it truly mean to create and engage with content intentionally and with a sense of purpose?
I love that question.
It's something to really think about.
What is the underlying why behind your own participation in this attention economy?
Exactly.
I think that's a great place to leave it.
Yeah. Food for thought.
Definitely. Thanks for joining me for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.